everybody hear me? Do you think? Push it over.
Or just talking to the mic.
Okay. Thank you so much and good morning. I'm Judy Vardoner and I'm director of the Summer Learning Institute. And if you look on your table, you have a handout for those of you who are old school. If there are more than 4 or 5 people, there are extras at some of the tables, so just raise your hand and somebody can bring one to you. I am doing this so that you can see some of what I'm not able to talk about today. I have a 10-minute talk that's going to last probably 15 minutes, but Jeff has given me graciously 5 extra minutes. And I have been known to wander a bit, so that's why we're doing it this way. And because of that, I'm going to read a script to you because I want to stay on time. That's very important to me. The first slide on that shows our funders. It's so important that I recognize those funders: Lilly Endowment, Indianapolis Foundation, the Kroger Company, the Central Indiana Community Foundation. Left off is also the Education Roundtable and the Indiana Department of Education, and Marion County Commission on Youth, and also Father Leopold, who graciously loaned us every summer his wonderful lab and let us just pretty much stay in there, and he didn't kick us out. And I'd like to say also that this grant has brought in over $500,000 to Marian University. I think it's right at $550,000. So this is a very special opportunity that Marian University has to impact summer learning in Indianapolis. This is not a randomized controlled study. Unfortunately, education is very difficult to do experimental research or causal research. And so I do have good news, though, because Wallace Foundation started a study at the same time that we started a study back in 2009. And the Wallace Foundation commissioned RAND with a multi-million-dollar grant to do a randomized control study on summer learning, and they used a national focus. There are 5 cities that participated: Boston, Pittsburgh, Rochester, Dallas, and Duval County, Florida, which some of you know as Jacksonville. So they have incredible results, and which are statistically significant, and I'll share those a little bit in my talk, but ours is not. And but I do believe that you'll agree that we are impacting the educational landscape for Indianapolis. So we start out with 2 research questions, and the first one is, can a university-led summer program improve math outcomes for children living in low-income areas of Indianapolis, and how many hours of summer math activities are needed to stop learning loss? And with that, I'm going to go to my script. You have slides, but for those of you who would like to see some of your students in action, I'm going to show you, if I can get this up. Jeff, help me maybe. Okay, all right. So I'm going to talk. So the rationale. In 2009, Marion County had approximately 38,700 youth enrolled in summer programs, and this represented 23% of the county's total school enrollment. The Central Indiana Community Foundation, with Lumina funding, and bless Roderick Wheeler's heart, if you know Roderick Wheeler, he led this charge, asked Marian University to conduct a study of the academic offerings of summer programs in the Indianapolis area. And I did the study, and results of this program, just to generalize, I have a white paper that I'll publish for you if you'd like to see it, showed that as a whole, summer program staff lacked the expertise needed to develop high-quality academic programs. They openly acknowledged their lack of expertise and said they totally relied on outside agencies or hired teachers or college students to develop the curriculum and provide the academic. instruction. So the quality of those offerings were really weak in most cases. Educational activities were looked upon at that time by most summer programs or community programs as an add-on to normal programming and were frequently replaced by trips to swimming pools, parks, the circus, and basketball games. So assessment of summer achievement to see if kids were learning or not was non-existent, and program providers said that they felt uncomfortable teaching math and reading. They did not want to assess kids and see if they were progressing because that was school. And they asked for professional development, academic materials, and teachers from Marian University, of course, because I was doing the study. So back in 2009, there was really a dearth of studies on summer learning. And that's why Wallace commissioned Rand to do an experimental study. But what I looked for is I looked at all the different research that was out there, and of course the National Assessment of Educational Progress was telling us that there were large learning gaps between children living in poverty and those and their more advantaged peers, and also between white children and children of color. So some early research was indicating that it might be a possible venue to have learning occur during the summer, that it might bring benefit. So some early research, so that was when Rand was commissioned to conduct this study. So what I did was I didn't have the benefit of Rand, and I didn't have the benefit of their experimental methods and their findings at that time. So I read what was out there, and drawing on my background of 20 plus years of teaching at-risk students in urban settings, I believe that Marian University could bring a wealth of resources to the table to create a vehicle to provide high-quality summer learning experiences for Indy's underserved populations. It matched our mission of serving, let's go to the slide. It won't, oh, I wanted to show you your kids because your kids are doing the slide, so, all right. I also believe that these low-pressure summer teaching experiences would allow teachers to experiment and practice hands-on teaching methods and provide experiences that would help future and novice teachers understand why kids struggle to learn and how that struggle can cause acting out behaviors in the classroom. So as I was reading the research on summer learning studies that had successfully mitigated learning loss, I also looked especially for university studies. I found that most had been done in collaboration with school systems, much like Earl Phelan has brought Summer Advantage to the city of Indianapolis. However, the Summer Learning Institute, Marian University Summer Learning Institute, was going to serve nonprofit community programs as a drop-in academic offering. And I found two studies of interest. The first was a program run by the University of Chicago in the Chicago Public Schools for kids who had missed the cut point in reading and math. And it was named Summer Bridge. They looked at low-achieving 3rd and 6th graders enrolled in public schools. And in that program, low-achieving 3rd graders were able to substantially increase math and reading achievement. The gains lasted 2 years later with a 12% average yearly learning gain. But the 6th graders, while they made approximately 6% of an average annual learning gain, showed little effect net-wise on 6th grade math achievement. So then I kept looking, and I found the study that some of you may know that began in 1997, continued over a quarter of a century with Carl Alexander, Doris Entwisle, and Linda Olson out of Johns Hopkins University. And what they did was in 1999, one of their graduate students, Matt Boulay especially, who became the person who found the National Summer Learning Institution, he's now at the University of Oregon, he decided to try a 3-year study. It was a randomized controlled study in the Baltimore public schools to teach reading. Although this study did not have statistically significant findings and focused on reading, it had three main goals that were similar to what I felt was needed in Indianapolis. One was to prevent summer learning loss and improve reading skills of high-poverty students. The second one was to transform college volunteerism into a focused and effective commitment. And three, to create a successful prototype that could easily and cost-effectively be replicated. The Johns Hopkins University students and recent graduates were trained and sent into Baltimore Public Schools to teach reading during 8 weeks in the summer to incoming kindergartners and subsequent first graders. The program was developed and led by university students and recent graduates. Experienced teachers in the Baltimore school system provided training and support to these university students and graduates. They were given 2 weeks of training on curriculum, lesson planning, behavior management, and working with parents. Class sizes were limited to 7 to 1, and instruction was provided 5 days a week with 3 morning hours of reading, writing, hands-on math, and science. The youth were pre- and post-tested on reading, vocabulary, and comprehension. They had about 400 kids participating, and they were given $800,000 to do it. The two sets of analyses were conducted to look at the preliminary effects, and what they found was that the program youth, the intervention youth, made greater gains in reading achievement than the control group in both cohorts. But again, there was no statistical significance. In the second one, done in 2006, there were positive effects reported for kids who participated at least 2 years, or 2 summers rather, with attendance rates greater than 39%, and that's something that Jeff is going to talk about, I think, a little bit, but maybe not. Okay, so while only 46% of the children in the study met this criteria, the effect of attending at least 2 of 3 summers at an average or better attendance rate was estimated as equivalent to 50% of 1 grade level gain in vocabulary, 40% of 1 grade level gain in comprehension, and 41% of 1 grade level gain in reading. This sounded pretty good to me. And from the other literature that I'd read, I knew that with math, there were some studies that had statistical difference in math. And to me, math is a gatekeeper for many, many, many subject areas. And so I saw this as a chance to create a feeder program to build math skills for kids who were underserved. I taught in Lawrence Township for many, many, many years. We had a top 30, and of the seniors always represented, and there were very few kids of color. And I knew from working with at-risk populations at the middle school and high school level that a lot of this was a result of where kids had moved from district to district to district, and math was a real killer for them. So in 2010, unlike the 800,000 Teach Baltimore study, the Marian University Summer Learning Institute officially began with $75,000 in funding from the Indianapolis Foundation. And as I said, subsequently, we have had over $500,000 awarded to us. And while the SLI was modeled after the Teach Baltimore, it's got some critical variations. First of all, I talked to the psychology department because I wanted to have a good design. This SLI provides academic offerings as drop-in programs to non-community organizations that run summer programs in Marion County. That's very different. Most programs are within a school system, and who are also funded. They have to be funded for us to offer them services by the Summer Youth Program Fund, which is a collaboration of funding partners organized under the Central Indiana Community Foundation. These include Indianapolis Foundation, Lilly Endowment, Lilly Company, Kroger Company. Marion County Commission on Youth has also funded us, as I said. What we do is we send out university students in teams along with a master teacher. That was a critical variation because I knew that it takes a master teacher to notice the nuances of what's not working right. The second thing is that we had a target ratio of lower than 7. 7 is too many for novices to handle. And we couldn't randomize because we couldn't tell programs that we were serving that we would not offer them academics. And so we offered our program to anybody who was enrolled in these community centers like Mary Rigg, Martin Luther King, Forest Manor Multi-Service Center, some faith-based. St. Joan of Arc has a summer program through Catholic Charities. So we served up to 37 programs some of these summers, which is a lot of manpower. The target, program visits are always scheduled 2 mornings a week or 2 afternoons a week. The visits last up to 2.5 hours, and we ask the programs to make a commitment to allow us to provide 10 hours over the whole course of the summer of math, and that's a very small amount compared to what other studies are showing. The last half hour of the 2.5 hours is spent debriefing with a master teacher and talking about what went well and planning for the next time. Now, in Indianapolis, each nonprofit has a unique identity, a lot like a snowflake. So we try to accommodate and not disrupt those identities. And so we didn't try to tell them what to do. We just asked for a time period. The one thing that we did ask is that they allow their staff to work with us so that they could learn these games and continue them and activities and continue them throughout the week. Our professional development for those programs at this time is embedded, and this can be really challenging because still to this day, as much as we've been in there and as much as they love us, the direct service staff, the people who are actually working with the kids, they regard this as their break time, and so they don't want to be there. And some of them, even some program directors, still say they, quote, hate math. So university students, our students, are provided with a week-long training that includes a crash course in methods, curriculum, assessment, cultural sensitivity, engagement, and brain-based learning. We use 2 instruments, progress, the Wide Range Achievement Test 3, which is now in 4. It's in its 4th iteration, and Pearson's Ames Web grade level probes. The RAP is designed to measure long-term, designed to be given each semester or at the beginning and the end of a year. When we started the program, our summers were longer. We hadn't gone to balanced calendars. So at that time, it was a pretty valid and reliable instrument. It's designed to test kindergarten through adults, and a lot of psychologists use this in their testing when they're doing evaluations of people who are struggling to learn. It's not a valid test anymore for us. And so we found Pearson, which is a wonderful test that's given to universities at no cost. School systems have to pay big bucks for this, and a lot of our school districts are using this test. It is an 8-minute test. It's aligned with standards. So you can see what areas exactly, what types of skills kids are deficit in. And so we use that to measure short-term growth, and we also use it to measure if we're making growth. Both instruments are nationally normed and valid and reliable. So similar to Teach Baltimore, the Summer Learning Institute has 3 important goals. And one is to stop and reverse summer learning loss. The second is to build great urban educators. And the third is to conduct and disseminate research findings to the field. I have to say that the Summer Learning Institute model is well liked in the community, and 2 years ago IUPUI picked it up, and they're using it now to do their reading programs in the same programs that we're doing, the summer youth program funded programs. So in the beginning years, we had some challenges. First, it was necessary to build capacity in summer program directors and their staff, so they realized the importance of offering quality education programs or academic programs. They, again, were concerned that assessing kids was too much like school. So what we did was, and this involved Dr. Beasley and Dr. Desautel and Dr. Hall and Summer Learning Institute teachers and myself, we offered monthly workshops. We offered them here at Marian, and we offered them on math, science, literacy, and brain-based learning. We offered them in local community centers. We offered them through the Marion County Commission on Youth. And we built a lot of capacity at that time. Summer science program, we found later as we got into about 2012 with a program the programs were asking us for science. There was now a national interest in, okay, kids need more science, they need hands-on science activities in the summer. And so what we did was we started a second initiative called Project Ignite with NASA. Dr. Vogt was part of this initiative. And some of you may have seen the NASA workshop signs that were posted on campus in the summertime. And so we, with funding from the Indiana Department of Education and the Education Roundtable, we created a hands-on training experience for local staff that were here in central Indiana, and then the trainings were expanded statewide to provide any teacher with hands-on science activities, which were created by NASA and also aligned to grade levels. So this continued for 3 years until all of the professional development was taken over and centralized in the Marion County Commission on Youth, so that the trainings could be offered to all, to a greater, they wanted it centralized, I guess is what I want to say. So then, with capacity well established, we focused back on our one goal, to stop and reverse summer learning loss. And then we had our requests for summer learning teachers and Summer Learning Institute teachers and activities grew to 37 program sites, with 48 SLI teachers hired to serve these programs. And over the years from 2011 through 2016, we've served an average each year of over 1,000 kids. That's a lot to have your hands on. And in the beginning, we tried to do every man. We offered reading, we offered math, we offered science. But after analyzing our data for 2013, we began limiting our activities to math. And if you turn your handouts over, you'll see an interaction effects. It's taken off. And I don't have it. So anyway, you can see. And at that point, when I saw that the trend line was going up for math, where kids were learning, and the trend line for science and a combination of math and science was going down, I decided we were going to math because at least we're seeing some progress there. So I'm going to summarize with this. RAND's multi-million-dollar national randomized study on summer learning programs has shown that summer programs can positively impact math and reading and mitigate learning loss for two critically important groups: low-achieving students and children of underrepresented populations living in underserved areas. Other research evidence suggests that many types of summer learning programs have the potential to prevent summer slide and perhaps create gains. RAND's correlational studies indicate that attendance rates, teacher quality, duration of program, intentionality, and class size do matter, and they found a relationship between high attendance and higher math scores, but they found no relationship between high attendance and reading. So while the SLI is not a causal study, it's exciting to know that the SLI study has similar findings as RAND's national study. And now Jeff's going to talk a little bit about what he's done with our data and smack me down on areas if I didn't get it right.
So I'm not going to present every year the studies we've done, just the last two, 15 and 16. But in every year we did data preparation, which is their score before the program started, before the intervention started, versus their post-test, which is after the intervention started. So we subtract the pre-test from the post-test. If you get a positive outcome, that's growth. If you get a negative outcome, that's loss. The point is to try to prevent summer loss. So everything you see in green, growth, is good. Everything you see in red is loss, is bad. Now, to compensate for the fact that we did not have a non-treated control group, we use the average number, or the median number, the middle number of hours, to split into roughly two equal groups of high level or high number of hours versus low. So we did a median split in 15 and 16. You can see the medians there are fairly close in terms of the number of hours. And looking at the results, these are from the RAT math. And we're using standardized scores because these kids were from a number of different grade levels. By comparing the standardized scores, those are put in the context of their grade level rather than looking at the raw scores, which are not in the context of their grade level. So, as you can see, the more hours they had, the better it was. With the kids that got 10 or more hours, they're showing growth. Not simply the lack of loss, which was actually the goal, to prevent loss, but you're actually seeing growth. For the kids that did less than 10 hours, it's a small, relatively small amount of loss, but it is still summer loss there. So that kind of makes it pretty obvious what we should be doing in terms of number of hours. Go higher than 10. When you look at the grade equivalency scores, so this is basically how they're scoring in terms of the grade level where they started the intervention versus the grade level when they finished the intervention. Again, red is bad, red is loss. So if they had less than those 10 hours, kids were actually coming out of the summer at a slightly lower grade level than when they entered the summer. If they're getting more than 10 hours of instruction, that's not a huge difference. But it does represent a lack of loss at least. It's a very small, not statistically significant, but there's no loss as long as they had the 10 hours. When we move to the Ames Web in 16, first of all, good news, you see all green. So these are all gains. The median changed, but in this case, what you're seeing is, again, if they're more than the middle number, so more than 8 hours of instruction, they're showing a greater gain in these Ames Web scores. One of the important measurements in these Ames Web scores is called the rate of increase, the ROI. Normally, the ROI is used to measure over a semester. So, for instance, the fall term. They'll give kids the Ames Web at the beginning of the fall term. They'll give kids the Ames Web at the end of the fall term. And they calculate this ROI as their average rate of increase per week in those Ames Web scores. What you see in the graph there is just the summer. So this is just the summer program. And what you're seeing is that essentially kids are adding, if they've had those 8 or more hours, they're adding about half a point to their scores, which is a very significant amount. When we put this in the context, we're talking about 90th percentile of increase per week. So that ROI, that 0.5 for those kids that got more than 8 hours, they're not just lacking summer loss in this case. They're improving at a rate that's greater than 90% of kids. Even the kids that got less than 8 hours. So they got some, not much. I mean, some of these kids had like 1 hour. But even those that got less than 1 hour or less than 8 hours, you can still see that we're looking at least a 25th percentile, which isn't great. But more often 50th percentile, which means they're holding their own. They're average. And that's for lower than 8. Higher than 8, we're talking about 90th percentile. So these kids are showing big gains relative to what you'd expect over the course of a semester, and this is only in the context of a summer program that they're showing these big gains. You want to wrap us up?
non-negotiable. And so what I'd like us to do is to take our data and look at the same things that Rand looked at. And one was the attendance, which we've already done some in the hours. But we can also, I think, look at over the years, because what the Rand study was showing is that in 2 summers that they were seeing some significance, and that's what I want to find out. Is there a cumulative effect? In past research, some of the research was showing that this effect is cumulative over the years, and with the community programs that we serve, many of their kids are year-round kids to them. They come back every year. So that's one thing. And then the second some of the future questions I want to do is I'd love to bring education pre-service teachers into this. I wanted to show you the video because so many of the kids that are Summer Learning Institute teachers are athletes, kids of color, who look a lot like and are culturally similar to the students that we serve in these nonprofit organizations. But I want to get our pre-service teachers involved because I believe that this can create a safe place for them to not only experiment, but also learn what kids struggle to learn. So many of our first year, our novice teachers, our Teach for America teachers, they really struggle with classroom management when they get into the school system. And this is a great place to learn how to be sensitive to kids who are culturally different than you. So future research questions: can for pre-service teachers build more learner-centered teachers? There's a real emphasis nationally, again, to look at learner-centeredness. So are we going to be able to do this? And then can we increase teachers' sense of efficacy using this type of a method? Sense of efficacy, Bandura did so much stuff on that and was recognized by the American Psychological Association. And there are a lot of self-reports that we can use for self-efficacy, but that's where I'd like to have us head in the future, especially with our pre-service teachers. I think it can make a great difference. The education department, the Teachers College, they're doing great jobs. I have to say that when I get Marian University students who are education majors, I know that they will know how to work in classrooms because we put them in field experiences. But I'm not so sure about some of them who are transfer students in or who are teachers, part of our master's degree programs. So, Jeff, any questions? I hope, have we gone over? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And if there are no questions, we'll continue on.